And we're live. Good to see
Live
you again,
again.
sir. Well, for round two with Modern Man in Search of Soul
Yes,
by
sir.
Carl Jung. I did find it to be extremely enjoyable.
Yeah. No, I liked what I was reading. I kind of just like breezed through it, which I wasn't expecting. But
We love
yeah.
that.
What's the first chapter, Tom? What is it? What are we looking at today?
Dream analysis and its practical application. It's I like uh dream analysis because it's kind of, I feel like most people kind of have a 50-50 or like a uh, white and black perspective on it. Either like it's either regarded as, just random neuronal firing of the um, memories of the day, um, and then others, for example, Jung regards it as something that's seems to act as a mediator or stabilization mechanism for the psyche in its conscious and unconscious state.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely talked with a lot of people in my lifetime, and just sometimes just bringing up the idea of dreams is kind of like it just doesn't affect them. Where for me, and then it's like the people that it does, I'm always like, I'm like, yes, let's talk about it. Let's talk about dreams. I'm like, this person's into dreams. And it's like, sometimes it weirds me out that people aren't into dreams. And it's not, and I don't think I ever, this is like, I'm now getting into, I guess, the psychology of dreams, but like, I never thought about it that deeply until like a few years ago. I was just more or less fascinated by the idea that like these kind of movie like things are going on and you're experiencing it
Hmm.
at night. And I loved when people wanted to talk about it because it's nothing like what you experience on a day to day basis, right?
I'd say like the closest is when you get like a lucid or semi-lucid dream, but
Mm-hmm.
like even that has an element, like a fleeting element to it,
What
like a
like
glimpse. Like I've had a couple dreams. I've never had a dream where I've been completely lucid in the dream, where I can control everything, the environment. The most lucid I've gotten was to the point where like I could control my own actions.
mm-hmm.
What was so interesting about that was that like the whole environment would shift all around me,
Mm-hmm.
complete like just out of nowhere, it just changed. But like I was just like perfectly fine with that. It's like, oh cool, all right. Like it
Right.
wasn't like a,
Like that's the norm in your dream.
yeah, right. So it's like that's where it gets interesting, 'cause it's like well, you have to think about it. Like, and another note to make is like I've heard a couple of people say like, oh, I don't dream. It's like you do, you just don't remember it. Because
Right.
if you time their sleep cycles when they're in REM sleep, and if you wake them up in REM sleep, they'll remember their dream.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do know also that um, what I guess you could say modern, I don't know, neuroscience would be the right word, but what we know is that dreams certainly seem to be uh, uh, what we know by a modern scientific standpoint is that they uh, help regulate emotion. They play some role in that because if you deprive somebody of REM sleep specifically, without necessarily waking them up, I don't really know how they do that, but you can do it, and you'll see a increase in like emotional instability
Mm-hmm.
that's correlated with it,
Yeah.
which it seems to make sense, and I guess would be the idea behind dream analysis in and of itself to
Mm-hmm.
act as a key to at least what Jung seems to be saying, um, a a door that or like a key to understanding not necessarily the origin of the neurosis or issue that you're having of some way, shape, or form, but of some kind of playing some kind of causal factor, just illuminating it. And I did end up thinking about, because when we were reading Peterson and we were talking about, how he illuminates these things, that we weren't aware of, but as soon as we became aware of them, it's like almost blatantly obvious that that's what we were doing
Hmm.
as soon as it was articulated. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of viewing the dream in that same way, as that um, there's something there that can illuminate um, experience or being, or some uh, element of your being.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the tough thing is Peterson is not talking about being in a dream state either. He's talking about, I would say, conscious, awakened states and experiencing stuff and making yourself aware of things that you're kind of disregarding in that conscious state, where this is you're going to sleep and you're letting your unconscious kind of run wild, and then you're trying to pick stuff out of your dreams. And we even just said that some people don't even remember their dreams. So what's
Mm-hmm.
funny is like you have this, wakened state, being conscious and alert, and still trying to figure out what it is that you're avoiding or resisting or unconscious of in a wakened state, right? Which is already difficult. And now we're going to like dream analysis, which is you have to be asleep in order to let the unconscious run wild, but then you also have to work at figuring out how to remember your dreams, how to interpret those dreams, and then um, like you said, figuring out what is the origin of either this neurosis, or he even brings up at one point predicting the future, like having some
That was interesting.
predictability in his
Mm-hmm.
dreams. So there's a lot there, and it's just when you think about it that way, it's almost like wow. So there's a lot of work to be done just in our waking moments of our lives, the time that we are conscious but trying to still make some of our unconscious behaviors conscious, and then the dream state, which is a very a large part of our life that we spend sleeping and dreaming, but there's also stuff there that can help us if we care to look, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's just really interesting because it's like because then it makes you think like, well, do I like practice on interpreting my dreams, or should I be worried more about when I'm awake? And it's like,
But
well, I guess both.
from
Like,
from what Young seems to be saying, it's not a very easy, straightforward process. That's for
no,
sure.
no, and
Um,
and that's what I'm saying is like some people, you have this normal conversation about some people don't remember their dreams, and it's like I just don't think people have it on their radar to do something like that. And it's
mhm.
almost easier just to say to yourself, yeah, I just sleep and I rest and I wake up. And then the waking hours are probably what I would think most people would think off the top of their head is most psychologically relevant. You know what I mean?
Well, for sure. I mean, there's a couple points that I wanted to make,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Go crazy.
I don't know. I'll probably lose a couple of them, but I'll talk about this one. It was your kind of distinction between consciousness and unconsciousness, where you said you kind of, you're when you're awake, you're in an alert, conscious state, and then when you're sleeping, the unconscious is there to roam, or
Hmm.
so to speak. However, I would say that the unconscious is just as active as your conscious awareness, if not more so, throughout the day.
No, and maybe I didn't make that clear, but I believe that too. That's what I was
Yeah.
saying. When you are awake, you're again, you're more conscious and alert, but your defenses holding your unconscious things at bay are also in place. So again,
Mhm.
that's what I was saying is
It's like a
you have to work diligently both in your conscious and awakened state to identify unconscious behaviors and things that are limiting maybe your awareness, like Peterson was talking about. But then in the dream state, you also have to work towards like interpreting the unconscious, and it's like and remembering your dreams alone, so that it takes work to say like, oh, did you remember your dreams to somebody? And
right.
it's like I don't know, I don't think I really remember my dreams. And then it's like, okay, well, you tell somebody to do a dream journal, and then maybe their dreams get more vivid, and even though they're experiencing this this unconscious that's kind of just like expressing itself in a state of being where there are no restrictions or there is no resistance to what's happening because you're asleep, but you still have to work at interpreting it and you still have to work at trying to remember it and picking out the details. So what I
Mm-hmm.
was saying is it's just interesting that you can experience the unconscious things in both states, but differently. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And in one way, when you're conscious and awake, you're actually the resistance is you're doing it yourself, like kind of like I said, holding these forces at bay versus at night, you can't do that. Like when you're in the dream just does what it wants. Like, and Carl Jung says that in like one of the
Right.
very first pages, he says it has no respect for the nature of rules and laws, right? And that's what you describe, where dreams can kind of change and shift in a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just trying to make clear that it's the
That was
unconscious
good.
is always something that you can tap into, but it happens at very different ways. And what I was also trying to conclude with is what I got from this chapter is Jung saying it's definitely something worth looking into and investigating,
Mm-hmm.
dream analysis and dreams and the unconscious, almost because it doesn't there is no resistance, right?
Yeah, it's a powerful or like idea, or not. It's not an idea, but what's happening. And I mean, he seems to think he seems to believe that it is the most, I guess, effective or efficient way of what to achieve what he identified as like the individuation process. This idea of kind of reaching a like a integration in your psyche where you kind of, because you think about, like, I mean, for example of like integration, it's like as you go through your day and you experience different psychological states, and that orients your being in the world completely differently, whether you're hungry or you have to go to the bathroom. Those are just two examples, but the amount of examples there, or mechanisms in that filter your attention and then select for behavioral patterns to achieve the goal, or um, they can be at odds with each other, I guess, so to speak. And I guess the idea is when that there's a desynchronization um, among the parts, so to speak, of your personality, then um, a neurosis results of some sort. And his thoughts are so fucking big, man. Jesus, I'm trying so hard to keep up with this line of thought. Um, yeah,
Uh,
and that, so the dream he regards as one of the most efficient ways to kind of figure out what these drives are, because when you're in one, you're not aware of the other, so to speak. But you've had, and like when you experience two conflicting drives, it's what we call like a state of cognitive dissonance,
mhm.
where, and it creates a kind of anxiety, I guess,
Mhm.
in regard to that. But that's probably as far as I can go with that at
Yeah.
this moment.
Well, I mean, you keep bringing up like this idea of neurosis, and for me, I guess like part of what I was taking from this chapter was he's saying that people are coming to therapy with a real life psychological problem, and whether it's, like I guess like for me, like, and let's just help me make sure this is clear, like
Hmm.
neurosis being that emotional instability.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what
so
that's the terminology that he uses to describe it. So I guess it's a good point to
right, right. So something's
define that.
bothering someone
Hmm.
so much
An
that it's
alteration in conscious
that it's
experience.
that it's interfering with their life, right?
Hmm.
And so I love the chapter because he gives these examples of dreams, and he talks about in the one of the very first ones is this guy that comes to therapy, and he tells him about this dream, and he gives a little background, and this guy pretty much worked his way up, the ladder. He went from being very poor to very rich, very ambitious, very driven. But then this dream that he has kind of illuminates the fact that he's kind of at his height, right? He's at the highest that he can be, And Jung's interpretation of his dream was like, you can't go any further. You know, the train that falls off the tracks is kind of trying to tell you that you're going too far, too high, too fast, and it's not going to be good. And you know that this is the case. That's what the dream is telling you. So again, this kind of shows that the unconscious in the dream state is almost almost again guiding you, right? Like
Mhm.
it's and again, this is what's so cool is your guard is down in this state, right? Like
Mhm.
in this guy's waking hours, he is so driven to keep moving up the ladder and to do something and to keep going that he ignores the fact that it's not healthy for him, that it's actually causing more harm than good. And in the dream, he can't really guard himself from that message. And the message is loud and clear. Um, and again, he says he ends up not working with this guy, but later finds out that he didn't do anything about it. He kept pushing and pushing, pushing, and it turned out
Mhm.
bad for him. And it's like, and for me, that's kind of like a way of saying, look, this is a dream that a patient of mine had or someone that he was going to work with. And it shows that there's some validity to looking into these dreams, you know, especially if
Mhm.
you're looking for support for this idea of the unconscious being this type of messenger, um, or just you know the part of yourself that I guess he would even say the other half of yourself if you have consciousness and unconsciousness working together that's trying to again really just show you the truth of who you are.
Yeah. No, I love that. That his examples, that one and the others, and I remember being so captivated by it when I was reading it, and just the interpretation that he gave of those dreams, and then the follow up of the life events after was pretty wild.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess maybe something to dive into is, you remember um, him talking about the relationship between the unconscious and the conscious as some kind of compensatory relationship, where what I'm thinking of is like, because like you have this guy in the dream that he described who is going in one direction, like unified drive towards it, or just and kind of ignoring, you know, precautionary signs of overdoing it, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and repressing, I guess you could say, that aspect of him that, needs to pull back
Right.
and chill. And you could say the machine's working too hard. And it seems like part of him unconsciously knows that. So it's interesting because it makes me think about whether, because you can, I guess the idea is that you can push things down into the unconscious. Well, we probably do it all the time,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure, because like, I mean, if you constantly like think of how much information we know and all of our life story and events and all of that, and you're aware of none of it right now when we're talking. Where is it?
I think it's there, right?
Well, like it is, but it isn't at the same time.
Yeah.
Like I feel like in my idea of what the conscious part of it is as like this like little flashlight, like laser beam that like can shine around and
Mm-hmm.
move. Whereas, like I said, like the unconscious is just the encapsulation of all of it. I think unconscious is kind of like, I don't really think it's it's not like a, it's like it's like a sign that just points to something and you look at it and you're like, I have no idea what that is, but this sign is called this, so I'm gonna call it that. Well, that's what symbols are. You know
I
what
don't
I'm
know if that
saying?
made sense to me.
So like, well, like you have something in the world, and before it's categorized and labeled, it's like anything. As soon as you label it, it's like a sign that points to, or as soon as you articulate it, I guess there's a deep relationship between language and consciousness. There's a whole theory there. Um, but as soon as you articulate something, it's not necessarily that you like it's always been there, but it's almost like that language and that sign is the tool that allows your conscious experience to use it. Like if I said pass the salt and you have no idea what salt was, you've never you can hear the word but you've never experienced like salt,
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to go anywhere with you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm saying is with like we say the unconscious,
Mm-hmm.
like okay, like it's not a definable term, it's not like a straightforward thing. And I think like we get these glimpses and hints of that it's there, but it seems like if you look for it you can't really find it, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and then but it can illuminate itself by your identification of habits or things that you're doing that you otherwise didn't know that you were really doing, but you're kind of just on autopilot, so to speak. But
But it's also like, with that being said, I feel like I agree with you. I agree that when we start categorizing things and labeling things and making the unconscious conscious, but I also think a part of what this is also just more of like, I think it's the way that we operate. Not everything is going to be conscious, but it's the important unconscious things that are happening in the background that is can sometimes even just be a feeling, right? Like it's like the dream that we just talked about, this guy that refuses to slow down when his unconscious is kind of giving him a dream that represents almost like a feeling. Like from the dream you should be able to understand that there's a feeling that says this is not this is not good for me, right? Like this is kind of like it's a warning. It's a feeling, so it's you can come out of that dream and kind of, I guess, make that feeling conscious,
mm-hmm,
or or try to describe that story, articulate the meaning of it, right? And I think maybe that's what Jung is saying with this dream analysis, is that
mm-hmm,
you have the ability to do that. And in the dream, again, the the message is like it kind of reminds me of a psychedelic experience sometimes. Whatever it is that's truly important is a lot of times the things are in the unconscious, and it throws itself at you in states like a psychedelic experience and states like a dream where you are literally, I don't even know if you're unable to guard yourself from it, or if those states allow you to accept it finally, where in our normal state, like when I go to work every day and everything's so routine, I'm probably not tapping into certain unconscious things that might be actually beneficial if I did and they would take work, but I'm guarded in that sense. You know what I mean? I'm
mm-hmm.
resisting it. Um, and I don't know if that helps shed
Because you
light
can like
on any of these
distract
ideas.
yourself, so to speak.
Right. Well, you even said like repression. So again, if you take a look at the psychodynamic view, which I think his is kind of like, he says in some ways like you can understand some of this from understanding someone like Freud, but in some ways he says that Freud is very wrong in some of the things that he believes, right?
Mm-hmm,
So the psychodynamic view is basically this idea of self-defense mechanisms that prevent the unconscious from being expressed and kind of creating more problems psychologically than yeah, I guess like problems that's why people go to therapy. And
mm-hmm,
that's again, that's the whole goal of this therapy when you do psychoanalysis, is trying to get people to tap into that.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, I'm just trying to shed light on the unconscious,
No, I love
because
it.
it's a very, because it's a difficult abstract idea,
But
and I think it's
it's there, so it's like we shouldn't avoid it just because it's difficult to
right.
talk about.
Right. And it's interesting too, because there's a lot of things that I've come across in my studies that say like it's almost like in some ways someone would say like you can just make that idea up of this idea of like conscious, unconscious, id, ego, superego, and all these things that kind of work together to kind of have a understanding of these things. But at the same time, then why do we have, the manifestation of these self-defense mechanisms that kind of represent exactly what it is that the psychodynamic view is trying to describe and explain, right? Like that
Hmm.
you have these forces, well, where do these self-defense mechanisms come from? And it's like, how else do you explain that? But that could be a whole nother discussion.
Without a doubt. Um, I guess we can dive into um, dreams themselves and his perspective on interpretation. I noticed a couple kind of powerful like therapy ideas from him in here in
Mm-hmm.
regards to um, I guess suggestion and like understanding on the part of the doctor,
Yes. Yes.
and that it's more important to, there was one, let me see if I can find out where he said it. I underlined it. Uh, well, there's a couple.
I like that he does this because I feel like this is literally a message for therapists, right? Like, I feel
Hmm.
like this is like one of
Oh
those
yeah.
things where the chapter is speaking to someone that's very interested in this and saying, if you're going to go into this, these are things that I've learned, things that I've understood from working with patients. And it's like, these are things that you might want to be weary of, right? Like,
Yeah, I definitely sense just such deep um, experiential wisdom that he's talking about right now, where he's just has had so much experience with all of this, where that's exactly what he's doing. He's articulating the wisdom that he's accumulated over the years.
yeah.
Um, I'll read this little section, and then we can dive into it a little bit. I'll start out with this one. Nothing is unclear to the understanding. It is only when we fail to understand that things appear unintelligible and confused. So I started with that, and then I'll dive into the little section. The psychiatrist, likewise, is prone to call a patient confused when he would do well to recognize the projection and admit his own confusion, for it is really his understanding that grows confused in the face of the patient's strange behavior. For the purposes of therapy, moreover, it is highly important for the analyst to admit his lack of understanding from time to time, for nothing is more unbearable for the patient than to always be understood. The latter, in any case, relies too much upon the mysterious insight of the doctor, and, by appealing to his professional vanity, lays a dangerous trap for him. By taking refuge in the doctor's self-confidence and profound understanding, the patient loses all sense of reality, falls into a stubborn transference, and retards the cure.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
So I just underlined that whole section. Put a big old box around it. Um,
Yeah, I feel like that's got to be a difficult position to be in, to be the therapist and
mhm,
to not just push everything on the patient as if you have all the answers and almost like they have nothing to offer, right? Like, um,
mhm. It's
yeah,
like the theories and stuff that you've learned, and it's like, well, we all have like, I mean, there are commonalities among our experience, but we all have a very unique subjective experience that, I guess, in a way, cannot possibly be fully understood by an external force.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't believe it can. I think that's kind of what he's saying here, in that um, where at the same time, receiving a diagnosis in some way, shape, or form can be very relieving to the person or a patient, client, um, just to know that it's like you're not alone, so to speak, and it takes an element of chaos out of it and establishes some order. So I think, like, I don't think he's um, promoting like not doing anything, but I think, like he said, to admit his lack of understanding from time to time, because um, when if you're trying to push development onto somebody and what you think is best for them, like I don't really think we can possibly know what's best for somebody else, and I don't think that would, for me, I don't see that as being the role of a therapist. Whereas what I would try to do, and I think this is what Jung was saying, is to kind of to avoid that trap, because then you trap the person in a framework conceptually of how to orient themselves rather than them kind of interacting with themselves and what's going on in their psyche on an organic like level where and then you're seeing it, I guess you could so to speak, like more directly, I feel like, if you allow them, but to act as a guide and to like, I guess, just illuminate things or act as a like a rebound of what they're experiencing. Like if they'll say something to you, like summarize it back to them so that they can hear it in the best way that you can. Like that to me seems to be like how to avoid the trap of I guess what he's talking about here. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's the
No, I think that's, I think honestly, like that's one of those portions of this chapter that's like really beneficial for, again, people trying to get into therapy maybe, because I think even outside of just dream analysis, I think it's speaking to
mhm,
like therapists in general and just saying like, you know, not having to be right, admitting when you don't understand, and like you said, all that, the value of communication along the way, so that you're constantly, you are trying to understand that person and realizing when you are, when you're not. um and again, not like just making sure, like I think there's like an art to this, right? Like that, from trial and error, that he's probably figuring out and now expressing to us that um it one, it's probably always going to be different from client to client, and two, just how difficult I guess it can be, and that the answer is not always going to be the same, right?
mhm.
Like but yeah, I don't know. I think it's something that I think this is one of those things where it's expressed in this chapter, and by thinking about it is clearly never going to be enough, like if you're going into the profession to be a therapist, but you have it in the back of your mind so that when you do experience something like sitting face to face with a client, and you observe yourself in the moment, kind of trying to be that dictator and trying to force this idea or belief on someone, you can then stop yourself in the moment and say, this is it, this is what he was talking about. And that's like almost that key thing there, is that
Mhm.
you've came across it, and then when you do it, you realize that you're doing it, where it might be a little more difficult if you maybe hadn't read some of this and he didn't give you his 2 cents on the situation.
I no, I love that because it's so helpful. And I want to conclude this little segment with another little quote from him.
Yeah.
He said, "We appeal only to the patient's brain if we try to inculcate a truth, but if we help him grow up to this truth in the course of his own development, we have reached his heart, and this appeal goes deeper and acts with greater force." And I think that's just like, if at that time, like that person is, not, because when you're telling somebody what they should do and dictating um, the truth of the whatever they're trying to do, then you're stripping them of their own vitality and their ability to become independent and grow and mature on their own. Because, like, to me, that's the goal of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
From if you're starting from a place beneath, where if you want to, like, if you have a problem that you're going for, is, or regardless, is to just become a self-sustaining, sufficient or efficient source of your own growth and development, and to utilize the skills that a therapist can provide, because there are many, like Jung is providing dream analysis here, and he talks in the end of the chapter how eventually, as he's gone through with various patients that he's had, they gotten to a point where, they can write their dreams out and reflect on them and do it on their own in that regard.
Right.
But
I mean, it's powerful stuff. And again, just going back to what we were saying, like this idea of you don't want to be that therapist where someone comes in and you force this answer on them, this idea of what you think it is without knowing too much, right? Like just assuming that you have the answer and that they can just leave and they're cured. And it's like you can't do that too quick. And you can't not achieve anything along the way. So again, it's that balance of like trying to figure that out the right pace for the right person, and again, yeah, just not jumping to conclusions too quickly, not trying to because I think like you've heard the quote, like with knowledge is power, and it's like you can use that in such a negative way if you just assume that you have the answer for somebody without really, giving them the time to open up and give you the information that you actually need to have for therapy to be successful. But yeah, I don't know. It's good stuff.
Oh yeah, man, I love it. Trying to take a look at some other stuff. So what else I underlined in here? Here's a little quote that we can reflect on for a second. We must never forget in dream analysis, even for a moment, that we move on treacherous ground where nothing is certain but uncertainty. Suitable warning for the dream interpreter, if only it were not so paradoxical, would be do anything you like, only don't try to understand. Sounds like a Zen thing to me, man.
It does. It does.
It's like one of the Zen koans.
Yeah, that does.
But
like it does, because like don't try to understand. It's like I thought that was the point, and it's like
well, I
is,
think
but it isn't, right?
Yeah, well, I think like what he's trying to get at is that if you're going into something trying to understand it, you're bringing forth your sea of theories and perspectives and facts of how you've seen it. And I guess what I've gotten from him talking about dreams in this chapter is that you kind of just have to try and go into it as raw as possible to a degree.
Right.
But like even some of the dreams where he's talked about his interpretation of, like I've thought about it and I was just like, I was just kind of, you could say, not likely to come to that interpretation of reading the dream and trying to interpret it before I read his interpretation of it, so to speak. So it seems that there's certainly a much more context to it where he tries to have the person, I think there's like another part of writing to kind of outline, I guess, what the patients would believe the conscious significance of the dream is too. Like to have them both so that you have some context to go through it. Because his idea, I guess, is that, like you said, it's kind of like a compensatory mechanism or relationship between the unconscious and conscious that's mediated by the dream. So it's like, so it's coming from somewhere in your conscious waking life and it's being expressed in the dream. And then so by providing the context of your waking life, then you can interpret the dream. However, it seems like some dreams are anticipatory interpretations of the future, which, as he said, also is you can't really figure out until a time has passed and you've continued to review it. So that's what, I mean, you were saying before, like this requires much more intense concentration and focus to I
Yeah.
guess, to use Jung's, um, uh, I guess, tools of dream analysis.
Hmm. So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is because he talks about this being scientific in nature, like this idea of dream analysis. So like, but if you throw something in there, like the quote that you said about the paradox and like
Mm-hmm.
understanding that you should try not to understand, and not bring again your preconceived ideas and beliefs and notion and theories, and like try to like it's the word I'm looking for, but like capture it by those and turn the dream so that it favors those things, right? Versus letting go of it all and coming to a collaborative and conclusion with the person that's experiencing the dream, and kind of trying to understand what that could mean from that way, as opposed to using a theory to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
But so what I'm saying is, it seems like that portion of what's happening is less scientific and more intuitive, and kind of this idea of like combining your thoughts on trying to understand what the dream's trying to tell you or interpret the dream. But would you say that what's more scientific is just that dream analysis works, that it's almost like a mechanism or a procedure that you can use with, and it can be successful in providing you with again these providing you with a way to essentially heal somebody, right? Like for
Mm-hmm.
them to figure out, for them to address their problems. And he brings up emotional instability a lot and neurosis, and it's like, so it's more or less like there's a scientific way of approaching something, but then within the process itself, you do kind of lose yourself to something that is kind of like, there. If there's no theory, then it's not really scientific, is it?
Well, so there is a theory, and that's the theory that there isn't a theory in going into it. That was his rebuttal to how it's still relatively scientific, I suppose. Because I remember reading that and thinking about that for a little bit, and it is a theory. All of what he's saying here, and the paradoxical element to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that just it makes it
But
sound
I
kind of
know what you mean.
contradicting to me.
Oh, it
And
is completely.
and it's like I think this is one of those things where it's like, if paradox and contradictions kind of they impact the scientific view, then it's like, what, like for me, I'm trying to figure out what's scientific about it. And for me, it would be, if you do dream analysis with all these clients, right? And let's say there's an 85% success rate that people um, address and get through and heal themselves along the way, then it's like, well, then that dream analysis works, and it's like, so so that's sort of scientific in itself because there's some empirical evidence that it's working, right? But
Mhm.
it's the experience itself where it's like you kind of have to let go of some of your scientific views in order to be able to interpret something like the unconscious in this way, right?
Yeah,
So it's just interesting
that
because
was well put.
it's like there's elements where it's like it's very reliable in that sense, in like that it's that there be evidence that it's successful, but then in the process itself, it's kind of like you're losing yourself to a different, like, um, almost like a different. You go to a different place in order to collaborate with the patient or the client. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? To figure out,
Yeah,
what do these dreams mean. You know what I mean? Because you can't just bring whatever theory it is into it, like you said, and just have the answer on deck. It doesn't work that
and
way.
I don't think it works that way due to because it's um, entirely subjective.
Right.
But as I guess you could say, he would argue that this is where the symbols and signs come into play a little bit. Is that this part kind of really eluded me a little bit, but it seems like there's some kind of, it didn't, something there that has a degree of consistency, but he was very paradoxical in the way to, or contradicting in the way that he talked about that as well, as there's a degree of consistency within a like um uh like sphere of what it could be,
Mm-hmm.
something like that, like an expression, like as if you have something there that he's figured out somehow is there. That seems to be what he's saying in the psyche that can be illuminated in dreams. Um, and it's his mandalas are a symbol of the self archetype, so to speak. And I guess that's the archetype that's kind of there and unchanging, but you could say has many different guises of expression and how
Okay.
it comes out. But that there's like a functional organ of the psyche, so to speak, and that there, I guess you could say, are couple are
So
different, and those are archetypes.
by diving into the dream, it would be a natural course that you would come across these symbols, and the symbols are something that are kind of, like you said, like every person is going to experience the symbol in some way, shape, or form. So that makes it
Hmm.
almost like reliable, and that like there's something there's something fixed
Yeah,
about
it's
what you end up finding.
to provide some context. He was deeply well read in mythology and religious symbolism. So he had, and it was very interesting because, and another some more context to add is that his patients weren't like people with like a little bit of anxiety. They were like people he mostly, I'm pretty sure, worked with, or for a large part, like pretty significantly mentally disturbed people in
Hmm.
various ways, from
Okay.
schizophrenia now to, but I'm sure he spanned across the board. But I remember him talking about, or Peterson telling about an experience, or what Jung said in one of his books about his like patients that he had that were schizophrenic, and the religious symbolism that emerged in their dreams were things that they'd never seen before, so to speak. But if they're schizophrenic, I guess you could say that that's not necessarily a reliable um, source of information, so to
Hmm.
speak. But it was very interesting. However, one thing that he noted is that these symbols, or the symbol of the self, seem to become more apparent in dreams of people as they were achieving, and it was a mandala. It's kind of like a labyrinth type looking symbol, almost interesting, but it has many different expressions, but there's some kind of underlying pattern. This makes me get real deep and think about like sacred geometry and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, so as people would progress and get better in their treatment, um, the mandala would become more apparent in their dreams, supposedly, as he
Hmm.
recalls. It's wild, but yeah, and I guess that's the idea. Because like, so here's, all right, I'm starting to like get this picture of like an evolutionary picture of the psyche. Because like we have these, like when we think about evolution, like it's a biological evolution in our development. But like, so like we have the unconscious, or we have dreams, right? And they're this whole like other world, a full blown created world that is as real as this one when we're in it, or at
Hmm.
least it seems so. Um, and so like, and then you take evolutionary perspective into play, and we've identified these kinds of, I don't really know how to describe it. Peterson's talked about it before, but these neurological structures that are kind of intact and in place and are pre-developed prior to uh, birth, I guess, so to
Hmm.
speak, and that like as and so you have these structures that are. Peterson wants to believe that it's evidence for archetypes, but
Well, it's already like knowledge that's already literally inherent like in you.
Yeah, right. So you have all
Right.
of this within you, and
Right.
it's structuralized, and then you have, like, you could say, this
You
underlying
have access
highways.
to it.
Yeah, that. And so, like, my idea is um like the self archetype is like one of these deep ancient structures. Like, like you could say, like, we've always had some form of heart, I guess, so to speak, for at least for a very long time. And as we've evolved as a species, or as we've just evolved across time, it's slowly changed in appearance and changed in shape, but it still is holding specific functions and a degree of similarity. Like, and so at the same time, what if our psyche and and that's where we are with consciousness now, is doing something akin to the same thing, but like on a whole, like on another level. Like, it's so hard to explain, but like you like daydreams and stuff like that, and all of that, it's our own little conceptual, it's not even conceptual, but it's just can be conceptual, but as if that itself, consciousness itself, slowly evolves across time. And it doesn't mean that, I'm not saying that there's a that psyche and brain is separated here. I'm not saying that. I mean, they seem completely aligned up with each other. But just as, like for example, old school computers with like the old games and stuff, you slide the space bar things back and forth, play pinball and shit, whatever. And then, so like as we become more and more advanced, and you replace the hardware, well, the the soft, or the internal display, or the software, also shifts as well. And it's not necessarily like, and like, you know what I mean? It's so hard to
Like
describe.
they work, both components work with each other.
Yes, it's a
And
complete
as you upgrade one,
interrelated relationship.
the experience or the game is also kind of upgraded, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and and it's different. It's a different
Yeah,
reality, and yeah, no, I get what you're
I
saying.
think it's like just, I don't know, it just paints a picture for me that I can picture, but I don't really know how to talk about.
I mean, when you're talking about evolution, I just think about increased complexity, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like we're at the point
Input power.
where we are so complex, and it's funny because you bring up Peterson, and we're not doing chapter two's podcast yet, but he talks about those structures that are in place that,
Really?
and it's almost like, yeah, it's almost like he says at some point that it is how you interact with the world that will activate some of those structures. And um
Yeah.
but but yeah, I just think, again, increased complexity. And it's like, for me, I think this idea of conscious unconscious is something that kind of, it seems complex, and it seems like, for me, this goes back to like, it's hard work to do something like dream analysis, and to have to explore your dreams to figure out the origin of neurosis, right? And it's like, wow, well, that seems a lot of work. But it's like, I almost feel like this goes hand in hand with this idea of like existential responsibility. And it's like, with being a human and being so complex, you get to, one, experience reality in a way that other species cannot. Like, we're on a whole nother level. We're on another playing field. We manipulate our environments. All these other species do not. Like, species live within the environment, and they understand how to sustain themselves across time. We are manipulating the environment. So our intelligence and everything is so much more advanced, and we're very complex in that way. So again, when there tends to be psychological problems, the complexity of those psychological problems is also, it's advanced, it's on another level. So I feel like it takes a lot of work to also understand those things. And I feel like that's where we are theorizing this idea of conscious and unconscious. And it's like, I feel like the main argument that Jung proposes is that if you disregard the unconscious, which is equally as important as the conscious state, then it's going to be very difficult for you to um, address, I would say, psychological problems, or almost maintain a healthy state that is required for you to kind of operate as this complex vehicle that is the human. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
No, I
that's
love
just,
that.
yeah, that's just where that's just how I make sense out of it at this point.
Well, there's another like there's another like um there's something else I want to add on to that for context. Like so like think about like I mean from my experience, like I've had um multiple different dramatic shifts in my conscious experience at the snap of a finger
Mm-hmm.
where my perspective was permanently changed almost. Um and so and spirituality or various religious rituals, meditations, or exercises seem to induce psychedelics, seem to all induce states like that. So it's like I'm thinking about like whether, um, well, I'm assuming that dreams hold that ability too. It's just another avenue in that regard to, you know, obtain some kind of profound insight into the nature of your subjective reality or reality that updates, you could say updates your structure or evolves it.
Yeah.
And well, that's like you think about how cool that is though, like organisms don't consciously evolve themselves, so to speak. I guess it just more so kind of happens across time based on environmental
Mm-hmm.
pressures and various other elements of randomicity. But it seems that we have, or at least it feels like we have, a very large degree of control over, you know, each and every day. Like you can explore new avenues, and dream analysis being one of them, to increase your well-being and understanding. With that, I think by increasing your understanding of who you are, what you are, how you relate to the environment around you, and how you perceive everything,
Mm-hmm.
um, naturally increases your well-being too. And like I've found, like, I've experienced like states more recently through Zen and stuff like that, where it's as if like there's just a states of mind or awareness that you can shift into that just have natural qualities of peace and like fulfillment and happiness just by being, just from being itself. To
Mm-hmm.
look out into nature or to look even at cars and to see just complete beauty in all of it. But to use beauty, to even use a word would be to miss the point. Oh, there's something I want to say this because I don't want to forget it. I had this experience today. It just like filled my soul. It was great. So, oh my gosh, it was like it was just like I'm not gonna try and describe it. I'm just gonna say what happened. So the garbage men were coming to pick up the trash today. As they were going through my neighborhood picking up the trash, and and then another one came for recycling. And both times I was outside when they were coming, and there was this little, probably like 4-year-old, 5-year-old girl up in the window of one of the houses, like with the window up, like standing, looking out the window. And she was like, "Thank you." Just like the most genuine, like, thank you. Like, "Hi, thank you. I hope you have a good day." It was
Yeah.
like, no, I just like watched that. That like kind of sent just like chills down my spine. Cause it's
Mm-hmm.
like, that was just, that's what it's about. That's what something's
So
about.
what is your unconscious trying to tell you?
I don't know. I need to be more respectful to people. It's a
No.
compensatory mechanism. No, it's telling me that, underneath it all, like all of these petty disputes and indifferences that we have with each other, and these um, various states that produce suffering of some degree or not based on conflict with one another, it's like we're all here. And to me, I think you can truly feel a deep sense of unity with all of that
Mm-hmm.
as a species, regardless of what somebody, I guess, somebody may have done in the end. I don't know. It seems more miracle-ish than that.
Yeah. I
And I
think
think
that's
it's the mystic vision, so to speak.
see, I think that's a good example of unconscious things that are there that represent themselves as feelings, as emotions, and you kind of like, now that you're talking about this experience, it's like you realize that there's something more there
Otherwise, it wouldn't have
that was
regarded.
right, and it's not so much communicated, but you experienced it, and it was a reaction, and in that moment, it was kind of like, oh shit, and like I feel so strongly about this. And for me, one of my theories would be like, you feel so strongly about it because there's a lack of it in your life, and you realize how important it is. Like it's so profound in that moment that it's like, I need more of this in my life. This is the kind of way that I want to feel. That's like kind of just recognizing something that's bigger than yourself, because you talked about ideas of unity and stuff like that. And I also think there's a lot that has to do with, if you feel unified, then there should be no judgmental perceptions of someone like a trash man, because I think it's easy to stereotype someone like that and be like, oh man, that's,
Hmm.
a low ranking job, like who would want to be a trash man? It's like, we all have roles to fill, and
It's a
guess what, we're
very
all
important
human.
role too
Right,
to
right.
fill.
So exactly. So yeah, I just think again, there's something there, which again is
I
interesting, because
yeah, Keith
what if there could be
diagnosing me
something?
on camera. I see how it is. There's supposed to be
I'm just
privacy with this.
I just
So-
think it goes hand in hand with what we're talking about, because I think that's a good
oh yeah.
example of starting, at least from, if there's anybody tuning in that's like still questioning, what does it mean, this idea of unconscious things that are going on. It's like, I think that's like something that's you could think about and say, okay, yeah, it's something that hits you, and it's like almost like, if you didn't talk to me about it today, maybe that's something where you don't allow this unconscious, spontaneous response to an event. Like, you don't latch onto it and kind of start to conduct yourself differently. So again, you just kind of disregard that it happened. And it's something that wasn't fully articulated. So again, it remains in this kind of like unconscious sphere, as we were saying, until you decide, I want this to impact me in such a way that I'm going to make it conscious. I'm going to say, I'm going to perceive reality in a way that my behavior kind of allows myself to incorporate something like, um, something like what the girl did, right? Like
Hmm.
acknowledging people in of different status, not being judgmental. And I think that's where you begin to integrate, and this idea of conscious and unconscious work together. And I think your example is good because it gives people the idea of how they can think about that process and how it works.
Beautifully elaborated. Well, you did good, because you just had me thinking so hard for a little bit by myself. I was like, damn, he's tearing me up right now.
I'm not tearing
No,
you
you're
up.
not tearing me up. It's great. No, but it like, you asked the right, like that was good from my perspective. Like, like in reading, like saying like the importance was of both people to be in alignment kind of naturally
Mhm.
about a truth of, integrating a certain aspect of unconscious experience into the conscious experience. And like that just happened. Like I just went through that.
Mhm. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a great feeling. And I
Yeah.
just recognized, as soon as you said that and I heard it back, I just like pinpointed a bunch of things.
Mhm.
And it was like a little like movie clip just went through my head about everything. Just automatically almost. It's like as if like, so you like have like on a computer you have icons, you click on them, and then but if the icon's not there you can't click on them.
Mhm.
So what if like experiences like that, and like, you might not even know what you value. Like I don't really necessarily think we create our own values. I think there is some element of creation, but like I think we naturally, where, like for an example, like when you like if you open up a newspaper, you kind of more so automatically than not look to things that are of interest to you without any thought about it. So it shows some orientation of your value
Mhm.
or what's directing your behavior. And I guess the idea is from integrating the unconscious is to identify the unconscious things that are directing your behavior, illuminate it, and then you can understand it and then integrate it
Mm-hmm.
rather than have it kind of pull you in some way in your life where where you kind of have no idea. It's like mixed feelings about various things that happen. I think it's just more apparent than not, but we just kind of don't really think about it because it's hard to really dive through all of that on your own in the
Yeah.
moment. Otherwise, I
Yeah.
would have done it
Well, I feel like
earlier.
something like those momentary things too. I feel like it's easy to suppress something like that because the feeling hits you, but we're so accustomed to, especially in our awakened state, when you kind of when you experience that, it's you were probably also doing other stuff, right? So I feel like you go from getting hit with that feeling to then going back to doing what you would normally do, and then kind of again avoiding or neglecting the fact that it happened.
Hmm.
So in a way, you're disregarding the importance of what just happened because you've automatically kind of went back to my normal state of this is my next task. This is what I was doing. And it's like, I think if I think all we really have to do is just take a little bit of time to allow that integration and allow ourselves to realize this is something that is almost more important than the task at hand.
Hmm.
Like, let me spend a little bit of time thinking about why this hit me so hard so that I can integrate it and it can become more of a part of me and my behaviors. And then I can go back to doing what I was doing. Like, just a little bit of work, a little bit. And like, what's funny is like, we're talking about dream analysis and therapy. What is therapy? Therapy's work. You don't go to therapy and not work. You work to get better, right? Like, work is involved. And, when we're talking about just this stuff in general, work's involved, you know? You don't just show up and someone has the answer.
I want to dive into Zen so bad right now. For another time.
Not this podcast.
All right.
This
Well,
is
I've got
Carl Jung only,
to.
which we
I've
even still are like
Hey, I've got some
diverting.
I've got some Carl. I got a book where Carl Jung did a forward into a Zen by DT Suzuki. It's a heavy one.
Yeah, yeah.
But
We can do that sometime.
all right, I got another experience for you though.
Oh God,
You ever seen the movie The Grudge?
no.
All right, well, there's a sound. It's a horror movie,
Mm-hmm.
and it gave me nightmares for a long time when I was a kid, because I watched it when I was too young. But it made this noise. It makes this noise before it like attacks somebody.
Oh God.
And I played it the other night because I was telling my friend about it because she had never seen it before. And I hooked my phone up was hooked up to the speaker, and I played it. And I was like, like it's been like probably 13, 14 years since I've even like associated with it. Soon as that thing hit, just like my whole like chills down my entire being.
That's freaky.
Yeah, I'm not diving into that one now. I'll leave that one in the conscious, in the unconscious.
The Grudge, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've
Okay.
watched it again, and it's just like super cheesy, but
Yeah.
shit hits when you're younger, man.
That's funny. That's good
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
You're
we
gonna have
love
some
it,
dream. You're gonna dream about that tonight.
dude. I hope my dreams aren't anticipatory. I've been having apocalyptic type dreams where
Yeah.
I'm like survival man, like slaying zombies and stuff like that.
Nice.
No, there was one like that. I don't really remember the contents of
Hmm.
it though. I did have a
Nice.
dream where I had a kid, like a baby, and I was holding it.
Whoa.
Dude, I woke up. Dude, I swear to God, I woke up and I was just like, that one kind of
Let's
hit.
talk about that.
Dude, that one kind of hit hard. And I was like, oh my God, that's my kid.
Okay.
I swear it stuck with me for like 2 days. I was like, well, I found something of severe value in life through my
Yeah.
dreams. Anticipatory, probably. I'd like to have a family.
Hmm.
I have a bunch of little mini me's running around.
Oh, oh dear God.
Exactly what the world needs these days.
This chapter definitely kind of makes me want to try and start recording my dreams again because
I'd like to start.
I haven't been remembering dreams. And then it's funny too because you hear him talk about these people coming into therapy And obviously, he's giving stories of people that have dreams to offer and that remember them. And I guess my question is like, are there people where like they come in and he's like, I guess we can't do dream therapy if you can't remember your dreams, kind of thing? Like, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, I just have a lot of questions because I feel like we even started this off by saying like some people don't remember their dreams, and it's like you can work towards it, but like, where does someone start? And I know that for me, dream journaling helps, but it only helps because I at least semi remember, like, I have vague ideas that I was dreaming. So then when I think about it and I write them down in the morning, that helps. It was helping me. They were becoming more vivid over time. But I was never the person that said, I don't dream. Is there someone out there that is is incapable of remembering their dreams? You know what I mean?
It's an interest. I mean, I'm sure there's probably cases of it, more
Yeah.
rare than not. But so did you have the experience when you had dream journaled in the past? I've done it before, and as I continued doing it, my dreams became more and more vivid by a significant margin.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
was by the next night. And there were also
Yeah. It
times,
doesn't take
and
doesn't
I
take
would
long.
reread my stuff like before I go to bed too, my
Hmm.
dreams. And there'd be times where I get placed back into like continuing the dream.
That
It's
never
very
happened to me.
interesting. I've
That
had that
never did
happen like
happen.
twice, but
I have.
it wasn't necessarily the same. It was like it was similar, but there was a significant difference at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. No. But
But they get more
makes me want to
vivid.
start the journal again, though.
I'm definitely probably gonna start tomorrow. I'm
Hmm.
curious. Well, so I'd like to um let me hit this pretty hard.
I think like I just want to say something real quick, just like
Mm-hmm.
so that it's on record. And like again, if someone was watching this and they're still questioning, like, what is this unconscious that they're talking about? And it's like, if if someone's listening in, it's like you do dream. Think about that, right? Think if you want to really understand some aspect of this idea of the unconscious, think about your dreams and think about how random everything is. And if you're not obviously like a lucid dreamer, you're just the viewer, right? Like you're watching it as if it's a movie, right? But you do have front row seats, and just start to think about how random it is, but how there are so many connections to what's there, right? Like the randomness, but also the combination of all those elements. There is something that you kind of feel connected to, because I think again you alluded to this earlier. In our conscious awakened state, we are experiencing so much that it makes its way into the dreams. So this is where that idea of this random everything that we've experienced, unconscious stuff, like realm that we're in, is there for you to experience, but it's also been influenced by your conscious awakened state. And just that's a good way to just think about it. Like, think about your dreams, think about being there, and think about how there are no rules in the same way that there are when you're awake and you're doing things. Like, that's just a way to begin to understand how to differentiate the two. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just those contrasting like elements, but how they both also are influenced by one another, which is interesting.
No, I love that. I could add two more little finishing quotes from Jung that I think sum it up
Yeah, yeah, do it.
pretty well. So or I guess tips in how you or tips in dream analysis and going into that if you'd like to try it. Um, the dream content is to be taken in all seriousness as something that has actually happened to us. It should be treated as a contributory factor in framing our conscious outlook. If we do not do this, we shall keep that one-sided conscious attitude which evoked the unconscious compensation in the first place. This is why every dream is a source of information and means of self regulation, and why dreams are our most effective aids in the task of building up the personality.
Boom. That sentence
There it
right there
is.
too. That's what I was trying to describe earlier, like talking about like the complexity of what it means to be human. And he like the terminology there, I think I love because he helps me to again be able to articulate even better. But self-regulation and building up the personality, like, and how he's saying it's necessary, right? Like I think that's where his
Mm-hmm.
obviously his views on this come in strong. It's like it's necessary for us as humans to consider this realm, to consider the unconscious, to consider the dreams in order to self-regulate and in order to build the personality. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the personality is everything that you allows you to operate in your conscious state, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's our identity, it's who we are, it's our patterns of behavior. So again, it's fundamental to our being.
The part that got me, that he said there was to take it as something that has actually happened to you. And if you think about it, like I'm thinking about, like, for example, in that dream when I had, like I was holding a little baby.
Mm-hmm.
It was my baby. That
Yeah.
shit, I was like, I was remembering that for like a week, like relatively vividly. And it was just like as if it happened. So it's like, and in the dream, it's like we are there, like we are, like what I'm saying is like, like when you wake up and you consciously say to yourself, oh, it was just a dream, and then you bury it,
Right.
versus actually acting as if you were in another, as if you were doing that and you lived that in the same sincerity that you do your conscious life. Then I feel like then you open a door for a more genuine interpretation of it.
I love you just I feel like I just had like that moment, right? Like
Did it hit? Yeah, that just hit me.
well it's almost like what's there's like a I can't even think of it right now. There's like this idea, but it's like you could live in a reality where you're the person that says, "Oh, it's just a dream," and you don't consider it at all, or the dreams are happening and you can choose to do exactly what you just described and pull something from it. And it made me think about his acknowledgement of how much time of our life we spend in this state, that you can gain so much more from it if you choose to take that outlook.
It's half your life.
Right. Versus, oh, it was just a dream. Let's not talk about it. Let's not think about it. And yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like, okay, it's like, it's like an argument where it's like, why wouldn't you? Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why, why wouldn't you want to look into it? Yeah. I don't know. That's hitting me really hard right now.
All right, I have one more.
Oh God.
One more quote. All right, it's gonna be a good one.
4 o'clock in the morning. Like, there's more. We're on chapter 3. I'm like, yeah.
I'm finishing the book tonight. All right. Here it is.
Don't stop reading, Tom.
I'm going till I drop. It's like you hear the normal stories. You played video games for 3 days straight and didn't eat. They did a podcast for 3 days straight and
I
didn't do
like it.
anything else. I'm
I
for
like
it.
it.
Might hit some yoga workouts in between, but
Get the
be
coffee.
good.
Get the coffee going.
Dude, I'll make a pot of coffee right now. Don't tempt me. I'm in my prime. I'm flowing right now. All right, here we go. It goes without saying that he should hold no preconceived opinions based upon this is about dream analysis, of course. It goes without saying that he should hold no preconceived opinions based on a particular theory, but stand ready in every single case to construct a totally new theory of dreams. There is still a boundless opportunity for pioneer work in this field. Boom, mic drop.
I love it. That's kind of like similar to what you were talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
too. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. Establishing a new theory within a framework, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
framework is psychoanalysis, dream analysis, psychodynamic view of, again, just people, right? Like these forces that interact with each other. And then saying within all that, you get to a point where a new theory emerges based on the contents of the dream and the client and the
Hmm.
experience. So it's really cool because I almost feel like it's those things lead you to that point to be able to explore it in that way. And without it, without, like even us talking about the value of dreaming and how like that just hit me so hard where it's like, wait, why am I not paying more attention to my dreams if there's so much there? And
Right.
Carl Jung is saying this is the framework where you do pay attention. It's saying you follow these steps, and then when this experience takes place, a new theory emerges within that, and you figure a lot out about yourself,
Well,
which
that's
is
what
kind of
that's what we have to do, like with knowledge in and of itself and all domain. So of course we'd have to do it here too. It's like when we
yeah,
kind of talked about on the last one where no, it's an ever evolving structure
right.
of understanding, and it's a tool that acts as that illuminates unknown territory. And that's what our dreams are right now, or the unconscious is a
Mm-hmm.
vast to our conscious mind, it is a vast sea of unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And the theories that you are at hand construct, it's like I just like picture like just building out and then like maybe you hit gold mine somewhere, who knows what you
Mm-hmm.
could find out.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's got to be some things hidden in there. I mean, I've certainly experienced it with various um, insights and stuff like that. That's I feel like that's what insights are.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they stem from the unconscious in somewhat way, shape, or form,
I
or
feel
they can
like
be
I'm gonna be really critical about what you just said
the.
because it's on my mind. But you said like exploring the unconscious and then hitting a gold mine is what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like I always have this idea of like being in balance with yourself, and like when you start to feel yourself pulled away from the true nature of who you are, I feel like the unconscious, like exploring that, might allow you to rebalance yourself versus not necessarily hit a gold mine, but allow you to come back to something that feels more euphoric because it's exactly who you know you can be and the type of place you know that you can be in, but you weren't there. So it's like not necessarily hitting gold mine, but feeling euphoric in the sense that you found your way back to yourself.
That is the
That-
gold mine. I
right.
guess that's
Well,
what I
and
meant
it's
by it.
like
I
no,
know how it
yeah,
sounded though. It's good that
no,
you said it because you made me think about it though.
it sounded like you can explore this and hit the jackpot. And it's like,
Be elated for weeks,
yeah, but
as
yeah,
if the
but I
ground is
mean,
heaving beneath your feet.
I feel like the feeling is analogous too, though. It's like you come back to yourself, and it's like this is how I want to feel, and it's like, yeah, I guess that's as good as hitting a jackpot or hitting a gold mine. You know what I mean?
No, I like it though.
I just had to think about it. I had to think
Of
about the way you were
course.
saying
Well, well, the way I phrased it, like I definitely saw that. So I'm glad you brought that up because you made
it.
me think about it. I was like, oh, he's got a point. I was like, nah, that's how I meant it. I was like, he's not gonna get me. I'm gonna do a little philosophical sleight of hand real quick.
Oh man, it's good stuff.
I love it, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you have any more concluding thoughts, sir? We've been at it for quite a bit.
I think I'm good for tonight, and I think I'm just honestly overall just really happy with the conversation because I didn't know
I
this
was
was
a
gonna be a
little.
tough one for me because I didn't have like I'm used to Peterson in the sense that like even though that was a heavy chapter that we read with Peterson, I just feel like we can talk so many things Peterson because we both have experienced so much and so many
Mm-hmm,
different types of like his content
mm-hmm.
in different ways and on different platforms. So there's a lot to talk about, even if we're not necessarily talking about the chapter. For this one, it's like, okay, let's keep coming back to dream analysis and Carl Jung's, perspective and like what he's trying to get through to us. And it's like, I feel like since this is so new to me, that was going to be difficult. But again, having someone like you that kind of picks up on other things and then just having this conversation about it and always finding a way to relate it to our own lives, I just feel like I'm really happy with what we ended up talking about. Um, and yeah, I think it's good stuff, and I'm really excited to see what else he has to offer.
Oh yeah, it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I I did. I had that same kind of like, I guess, just like unsureness of like of me having anything to offer because like reading that and like trying to decipher what I did know because there's a lot of there were parts of it where it was just like more so towards the end of the chapter I feel like where he just got like the way he was talking I felt like as if I needed to like have a certain experience and of some way to understand it to a degree. So I
Mm.
definitely like felt that coming into this conversation. So also didn't know how well I was gonna do. I'm a little hungover, so but we were cruising along. But no, it was I got a tremendous amount out of this. Like it like you said, it revivified something that I had known about in the past and that I had tried to do, but I realized now that I was what you could say is not ready for it then with the tools that he's laid out here and just I feel as if I don't know, I'm just excited more than
Mhm.
anything to just explore my dreams and I know that like even recently I've been having extremely vivid dreams and I have been remembering a lot so I'm excited to just to explore that because it's really a whole nother world
Yeah.
and this is our life and we're living it either way and it's
Hmm.
like no, I understand if you choose not to want to explore it but I don't know, to me I just can't help it. I need
Like
to explore it now.
it's another avenue, and it's
Mhm.
it's there for you to explore. Like you said, it's a choice that you make whether you do or not. And for me, it's something like we're gonna go to sleep every night. I think it's within our ability to be able to just reflect on those dreams a little bit every once, even if it was every once in a while, just a little bit to say, are my dreams offering me something? Is it something that, or especially if it's something like that's contributing to this idea of like neurosis, right? It's like, is there something there? And just taking a little time to
Mhm.
reflect on it, because guess what? You go to sleep every night. They're there for you. So it's like it's not even something that you have to go out of your way to explore. You just have to put a little bit of work into reflecting on what it was that presented itself to you in the dream. That's it. But it's gonna be there, you know?
Mhm. And I mean,
So
certainly if Jung's right in the fact that he seems to believe that it's the quickest way to achieve kind of psychological equilibrium, for lack of a better word. He uses individuation. I feel like Maslow's self-actualization is the same thing.
mm-hmm,
When I feel like they're all beating around the bush, so to speak.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there, and we're so quick. I feel like to just disregard it because of the immense emphasis on just objective truth, so to speak, and that
yeah,
there's not really a type of, I guess, metaphorical truth that can be found in dreams. I think,
mm-hmm,
if that's the right way to describe it. But no, very enjoyable podcast as usual, though,
mm-hmm.
and I hope whoever's listening enjoyed it as much as we did. And like Keith said, feel free to comment. Let us know what your thoughts are and what you got out of it. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear about it.
For sure.
But awesome. Till next time, good sir.
Cool. Good night.
Good night.